The winter air was sharp and biting as Joshua Mitchell stepped out of his office building, his breath forming a misty cloud in the cold. Though he tried to mask his emotions, his mind was weighed down with thoughts that saddened him. The soft glow of streetlights illuminated his path to the car, the snow crunching beneath his feet. Every step through the icy landscape reminded him of the 4 long years since his life had changed forever. As he settled into the driver's seat, Joshua pulled out his phone and dialed Miss Rich, his daughter Stacy's nanny. The familiar ringing was soon replaced by her calm, steady voice. "Good evening, Mr. Mitchell," she greeted him warmly. "Good evening, Miss Rich. How's my little girl?" he asked, a small smile creeping onto his face. In response, the joyful sounds of his daughter's laughter spilled through the phone, momentarily breaking through the darkness that weighed on his heart. Her laughter was like magic, pure and uplifting. "I'll be home soon," Joshua said softly before ending the call. On his way back, Joshua made an uncharacteristic stop at a flower shop. He carefully selected a bouquet of crimson roses, each bloom arranged with care. These roses carried a deep meaning for him, a symbol of the love he still held for his late wife, Eva. Her memory remained an inseparable part of his life. At the cemetery, Joshua's heart raced as he approached Eva's grave. The sky was a dull gray, and the wind howled mournfully, as though bidding farewell to the departed. He knelt by the gravestone, where her name was etched into the cold stone. A fresh bouquet of flowers already lay there, a tribute he had left earlier. "I miss you so much, my love," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Stacy needs her mom. I still blame myself for not being able to save you." His voice trailed off into a choked silence, his words barely audible, each one weighed down by regret. He lingered there, seeking solace in the presence of her memory, but finding only emptiness in return. When Joshua returned home, Stacy greeted him with pure, unbridled joy. "Daddy's home!" she exclaimed, running to him with open arms. He scooped her up and spun her around, her laughter filling the house. In that moment, he couldn't help but think of Eva, how she used to watch them like this, her smile full of love. His tears mixed with his laughter as he held Stacy close. "How's my princess?" he asked with a warm smile. "I'm great," she said excitedly. "Miss Rich and I built a castle out of blocks." Taking his hand, she led him eagerly to the playroom. Inside, the walls were decorated with Stacy's colorful drawings. She proudly showed off her block castle, and Joshua knelt to admire her work. His heart swelled with warmth as they spent the evening together, playing and talking. Dinner was simple, yet comforting. Baked chicken and salad prepared by Miss Rich. Afterward, Joshua read Stacy a bedtime story. She drifted off to sleep in his arms, and as he gently stroked her hair, he whispered, "Mommy loves you, sweetie." But for Joshua, the night was anything but restful. Lying awake in bed, his mind drifted back to the past. Memories of Eva flooded his thoughts, her laughter, her touch, the way she had loved and cared for both him and Stacy. It felt so vivid, as though she was still there with him. Morning came, and as usual, Joshua woke before dawn. While Stacy still slept, he sat at the kitchen table with a steaming cup of coffee. He allowed himself a brief moment of quiet reflection, thinking about the previous evening and the workday ahead. The warmth of the coffee brought a small comfort, mingling with memories of the peaceful evenings he had once shared with Eva. Even in her absence, those memories gave him strength to keep going. Joshua stepped out of his house, briefcase in hand, and made his way to the car. The gray skies above mirrored the unease he felt in his heart, a sensation that had become all too familiar. Days like this had never bothered him before, but now every morning seemed to bring a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Arriving at the office, Joshua was greeted by his ever-efficient secretary, Miss Stark. Her tailored suit and impeccably styled hair gave her a professional air that never wavered. "Good morning, Mr. Mitchell," she said with a warm smile. "Good morning, Miss Stark. How are you today?" he asked, "Everything's fine, thank you," she replied. "Just a reminder, you have a meeting with the partners at noon. I've prepared all the documents and emailed them to you." She handed him a neatly arranged folder. "Thank you," Joshua said, taking the documents before heading into his office. Once seated, he began reviewing the materials Miss Stark had prepared. The data and proposals were well organized, but his mind wasn't entirely on the details. He was strategizing, thinking about how to present a deal that would benefit his company while satisfying the partners. As the clock approached noon, Joshua left the office and made his way to the law firm for a meeting with his attorney, Mr. Hardley. The firm's building, located in the city center, was a place Joshua had visited often. Yet it always stirred a slight nervousness in him. "Good afternoon, Mr. Mitchell." Hardley greeted him with a firm handshake. "How are you?" "I'm doing well, thank you. I hope you are too," Joshua replied. "Yes, all is well. Please, have a seat." "Let's discuss your case," Hardley said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. The two began reviewing the partners' proposal. Hardley pointed out that the partners were suggesting an increase in percentages, arguing that it would strengthen the collaboration. "I think your current proposal is already fair and beneficial," Hardley noted, flipping through the documents. "An increase in percentages would bring greater risks and costs." Joshua nodded. "I agree, but I want this deal to work for both sides. We can't afford significant losses in the current climate. Do you think suggesting a compromise might work? Perhaps a bonus or additional terms for long-term collaboration?" Hardley leaned forward thoughtfully. "That could be a viable approach, but every step needs careful consideration, and you'll have to justify your proposal effectively." As they discussed possible strategies, the office door opened, and Hardley's assistant entered with additional documents. "Sorry to interrupt, but there are a few more details we need to review," she said, handing the files to Hardley. "Thank you," Hardley replied, glancing through the new materials. While Hardley analyzed the papers, Joshua's thoughts turned to the meeting ahead. Every word, every argument would matter. Confidence and precision were critical to securing a favorable outcome. "Do you think offering a small bonus would convince them to agree to our terms?" Joshua asked. "It's worth a try," Hardley said, jotting down notes. "It's a reasonable offer, and it shows goodwill." Joshua nodded, weighing the suggestion. He understood the importance of being meticulous. One misstep could jeopardize the entire deal. "Great, if everything is set, I can present our proposal as both fair and beneficial," he said, standing up. "I'll prepare the necessary adjustments and finalize the documents," Hardley assured him. "You've got this." Leaving the attorney's office, Joshua felt a surge of relief. Though the day's challenges were far from over, he felt more confident in his preparation and strategy. Back at his office, he immersed himself in work, fine-tuning his presentation and discussing the proposal with his colleagues. The hours flew by as lunchtime approached. With every passing minute, the tension in his chest grew, but so did his determination. When it was finally time, Joshua headed to the restaurant where the meeting was scheduled. Known for its cozy ambiance and impeccable service, the venue offered a calm, professional setting. Light background music played as he entered, and the warm, inviting atmosphere steadied his nerves. In the corner of the room, Joshua spotted the partners already seated. Mr. Thompson, the lead negotiator, sat at the table with his assistant. Joshua took a deep breath, straightened his posture, and approached the table, ready to present his case with poise and confidence. As Joshua approached the table, Mr. Thompson stood and extended his hand. "Good afternoon, Mr. Mitchell. It's good to see you. I hope we can have a constructive discussion about the proposal," he said with a polite smile. Joshua returned the handshake. "Good afternoon, Mr. Thompson. Thank you for making time today. I hope the proposal will meet your expectations." They both sat down, and Joshua noticed a young woman at the table. She appeared to be in her mid-20s, with long dark hair and expressive eyes. Her gaze lingered on him, sharp and focused, making him slightly uneasy. However, he quickly redirected his attention to the conversation as the waiter arrived with menus. Mr. Thompson wasted no time. "I've reviewed your proposal, and overall I find it promising," he began, flipping through the documents Joshua had brought. "However, I'd like to discuss the possibility of increasing the percentage. That point is critical for us." Joshua remained calm, though he felt the tension rise. "I understand your position, Mr. Thompson, but I cannot agree to a percentage increase. We need to ensure the company covers its costs while maintaining a small profit margin. Our current proposal already provides substantial benefits to your side." The young woman, who Joshua now identified as Lillian, continued to watch him closely. Her expression was neutral, but her scrutiny was palpable, as though she were analyzing every word. Mr. Thompson nodded slightly, still absorbed in the documents. "I understand your reasoning, Mr. Mitchell, but I believe we'll need more time to evaluate this thoroughly. Rushing to a decision wouldn't be prudent." Joshua nodded. "That's fair. Take a week to review the details. I'm confident you'll see the value in our proposal. However, if it doesn't align with your goals, I may have to explore other potential partnerships." Mr. Thompson leaned back and smiled faintly, a smile that carried an air of calculated negotiation. "I'm sure we can find common ground, Mr. Mitchell. I'll get back to you as soon as possible." As they stood to leave, Lillian approached Joshua. With a light, confident gesture, she handed him her business card. "Mr. Mitchell, if you need any additional consultations or assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out," she said with a soft smile. Joshua took the card, returning her smile politely. "Thank you, Lillian. I'll keep that in mind." Her gaze lingered on him for a moment longer than he expected, but he chose not to dwell on it as he made his way to the exit. The meeting hadn't gone quite as he hoped, but it felt like the beginning of a longer negotiation process. Back at his office, Joshua placed Lillian's card on his desk, trying to focus on preparing for the next steps. As the hours passed and the office emptied, he reviewed the proposal again, strategizing for the next meeting. Yet thoughts of Lillian lingered. Her professional demeanor had been impeccable, but there was something in her behavior he couldn't quite place. Later that night, Joshua arrived home, exhausted. The clock showed nearly 11 p.m. He hung up his coat and wandered into the kitchen, where the scent of Miss Rich's dinner still lingered. Not feeling hungry, he poured himself a glass of whiskey and sat at the dining table. As he sipped his drink, his hand brushed against Lillian's business card. He froze for a moment, staring at the name printed on it, before impulsively deciding to call her. The phone rang, and her voice soon answered. "Good evening," she said warmly. "Good evening, Lillian. This is Joshua Mitchell. I hope I'm not bothering you at this hour," he began, keeping his tone casual. She let out a light laugh. "Not at all, Mr. Mitchell. I recognized your voice. How can I help you?" "I just wanted to follow up and see how your day went," he said, trying to keep the conversation light. "Oh, it was busy," Lillian replied, her voice softening. "But Mr. Thompson will be on a business trip for a few days, so things should quiet down a bit. How about you?" "Quite tense," Joshua admitted. "A lot of paperwork and preparations for what's next. That said, I'd like to spend tomorrow evening in a more pleasant setting. May I invite you to dinner?" There was a pause, then a note of enthusiasm entered her voice. "That sounds wonderful. I'd love to. Where and when?" Joshua quickly scanned a list of restaurants on his phone. "How about Villa El Roa at 8 p.m.? It's known for its cozy atmosphere and excellent food." "That sounds perfect," Lillian replied, her warmth evident. "I'll look forward to your message with the details." "Of course. I'll send you the address and time," Joshua said. "Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Have a good night." Lillian said before hanging up. Joshua leaned back in his chair, staring at the phone for a moment. The day had been long and challenging, but this unexpected invitation left him with a mix of anticipation and uncertainty about what lay ahead. After hanging up the call with Lillian, Joshua felt his heart racing. He finished his whiskey and headed to bed, but his mind was occupied with thoughts about the upcoming meeting and the evening he planned to spend with her. The next morning began with cheerful chaos. Joshua was still asleep when his young daughter, Stacy, burst into his bedroom. Full of energy and joy, she jumped onto the bed. "Daddy, it's time to wake up," she exclaimed, wrapping her small arms around him. Joshua groggily rubbed his eyes and smiled. "Good morning, princess," he said, pulling her into a hug and kissing the top of her head. "What made you wake up so early?" "The nanny promised we'd go for a picnic in the park today," Stacy said excitedly, bouncing on the bed. "I can't wait." "Well then, since you're so eager, let's start the day with breakfast," Joshua said, stretching as he got out of bed. "We both want to make the most of this day." After a quick breakfast, Stacy and her nanny, Miss Rich, headed to the park, armed with a bag of sandwiches and a picnic basket. Joshua was glad his daughter would spend the day outdoors, but he had to head to the office to wrap up some important tasks. Once at work, Joshua found it hard to concentrate. Although he sat at his desk with a stack of papers to review, his thoughts kept drifting to the dinner he had planned with Lillian. Unable to shake his excitement, he decided to make a thoughtful gesture and sent her a bouquet of flowers via courier, hoping to brighten her day. Later, Lillian sent him a message. "The flowers are beautiful. Thank you." Seeing her response immediately lifted Joshua's spirits, and he returned to work with a renewed sense of energy. Just then, his best friend and the company's head of marketing, Nicholas, walked into his office. "Oh, I see someone's life is taking an exciting turn," Nicholas said with a grin, noticing the happiness on Joshua's face. "Flowers? That's new for you." Joshua laughed. "How do you know about the flowers?" he asked, getting up from his desk. "Buddy, I know you," Nicholas replied with a chuckle. "So, who's the lucky lady?" "Lillian," Joshua admitted, unable to hide his smile. "She works as Mr. Thompson's assistant." "Aha, so she's not from our team," Nicholas teased, squinting playfully. "I thought we had a new hire I didn't know about." "No, it's not like that," Joshua said, shaking his head. "We just met during a business meeting." Nicholas smirked. "You don't seem like someone who's just met her. Have you asked her out yet?" Joshua hesitated for a moment before confessing. "Yes, we're having dinner tonight." "Ah, I knew it," Nicholas said, clapping him on the shoulder. "You'll have to tell me all about it later." "Promise," Joshua replied with a laugh. "Now, let me get back to work." Once Nicholas left, Joshua tried to focus, but his mind kept returning to Lillian. Around lunchtime, he checked his phone again and saw another message from her, thanking him once more for the flowers. The hours leading up to dinner felt endless. Joshua could barely concentrate on his work, as anticipation and excitement filled his thoughts. When the workday finally ended, he hurried home to prepare for the evening. After a quick shower, he chose one of his best suits and took extra care to ensure everything was perfect. As the time for their meeting approached, his excitement grew. Before leaving the house, he double-checked the restaurant details to confirm everything was on track. When he arrived at Villa El Roa, he realized he was early. Taking a moment to calm his nerves, he glanced at his reflection in the restaurant's entrance mirror. Despite trying to stay composed, he couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and anticipation. When Lillian entered the restaurant, her presence immediately caught everyone's attention. She wore an elegant black dress that highlighted her refined beauty. Joshua stood to greet her, and when she smiled, his heart skipped a beat. "Lillian, you look stunning," Joshua said, gently kissing her hand as a greeting. "Thank you, Joshua," she replied, her eyes sparkling. "I'm glad we could meet. You look very dashing yourself." They sat at their table and began looking over the menu. Joshua ordered a bottle of wine and suggested, "How about we start the evening with something light? It's the perfect way to relax and talk." "Great idea," Lillian agreed with a smile. "Let's try something a bit unusual. I love discovering new things." Throughout the evening, their conversation flowed effortlessly. Lillian shared stories about her hobbies, her love for art, and her travel experiences. In turn, Joshua spoke about his recent trips and interesting moments from his life. He especially enjoyed talking about his daughter, Stacy, and the joy she brought to his life. As the night went on, the connection between them deepened. For Joshua, it wasn't just a dinner. It felt like the start of something new, something he hadn't experienced in a long time. As the conversation shifted to family, Joshua's face lit up. "Stacy is my little joy," he said warmly. "She always finds a way to lift my spirits. We often go to the park or have picnics. She loves spending time outdoors." "She must be very sweet," Lillian replied, her eyes filled with genuine warmth. "I've always wanted to be a mom. It must be incredibly rewarding to see your child grow and thrive." Joshua, a bit embarrassed yet touched by her sincerity, nodded. "It truly is a happiness like no other, but it hasn't always been easy. Stacy and I have gone through a lot since her mom passed away. I've tried to be a rock through it all." Lillian placed her hand gently on his, her touch soft and comforting. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that," she said with deep compassion. "I can only imagine how hard it must have been for both of you. But you're doing an amazing job, and it shows." Joshua felt a wave of emotion at her words, her empathy giving him a rare sense of comfort. "Thank you," he said haltingly. "That means a lot to me. I really try. For Stacy." As the evening went on, their conversation grew more personal. They shared their dreams, fears, and hopes. Lillian opened up about how life often felt overwhelming for her. "Sometimes life feels so hectic that I lose myself in it," she admitted. "But when I find a moment to rest, everything seems to fall into place." Joshua nodded, understanding completely. "I know what you mean. Sometimes I just need to stop and enjoy the moment. Evenings like this remind me to slow down and recharge." After dinner, Joshua offered to drive Lillian home. The night air was fresh and cool as they walked to his car. During the drive, their conversation continued effortlessly. "I just want to say," Joshua began as they pulled up to her house, "that this evening has been very special to me. I've really enjoyed spending time with you." Lillian turned to him, her eyes sparkling in the soft glow of the streetlights. "I've enjoyed it too, Joshua. I felt so comfortable with you tonight." As they said goodbye, Joshua leaned in slowly, and before he could second-guess himself, he kissed her gently. Lillian returned the kiss, and for a moment, it felt as if time had stopped. When they pulled back, Joshua's heart was racing. "Good night, Lillian," he said softly. "Good night, Joshua," she replied with a smile before stepping inside. Joshua watched her disappear into the house, his heart full of emotions he hadn't felt in years. He couldn't believe how quickly she had captured his affection. With a renewed sense of hope, he drove home, already looking forward to their next meeting. The next morning, Joshua woke up early, despite the whirlwind of emotions from the previous night. As always, Stacy was the first to wake him. "Dad, wake up!" she called, her voice full of excitement. Joshua opened his eyes to see her bright, smiling face. "Are we going to the park again today?" she asked eagerly. "Good morning, Princess," he said, sitting up to hug her. "Yes, we're going to the park, but first, we need to have breakfast." Stacy bounced around the room with excitement, while Joshua prepared their breakfast. Time with her always brought him a sense of joy and peace, and today felt special, as if something meaningful awaited him. After breakfast, Joshua found Lillian's business card in his pocket and decided to send her a quick message. "Hi, Lillian," he wrote. "How's your day going? Hope all is well." Within minutes, she replied, Hi, Joshua. My day's been quite challenging, but it's going great overall. How about you? Stacy and I are heading to the park, he responded. That sounds wonderful. Have a great time, Lillian replied warmly. By midday, Joshua and Stacy arrived at the park. The sun was shining, and the greenery and flowers made it a perfect day for a stroll. Stacy quickly immersed herself in playing, and Joshua used the time to reflect on his growing connection with Lillian. By the evening, they returned home. Stacy was full of excitement from their day together and quickly fell asleep. In the weeks that followed, Joshua and Lillian's relationship blossomed. They spent more time together, sharing new experiences and deepening their bond. One evening, after work, they met at a cozy restaurant they hadn't visited before, known for its unique menu and inviting atmosphere. Hi, Joshua, Lillian said as she approached the table, dressed in an elegant dress that highlighted her grace. Sorry, I'm late. Traffic was terrible, she added apologetically. No worries, Joshua replied, standing up to greet her with a kiss on the cheek. I'm just happy to see you. How was your day? I spent most of it working, Lillian said as she sat down. But this evening is definitely worth the wait. I have some news to share with you. Oh, what news? Joshua asked, pouring wine into their glasses. I was offered the opportunity to work on something more exciting, Lillian said with a joyful smile. I'll be involved in bigger projects now. That's wonderful, Joshua said, reaching over to hug her. You deserve it. I'm so proud of you. Their conversation shifted to future plans. They decided to visit a contemporary art exhibition opening the following week, something Lillian was particularly excited about. Joshua noticed how her face lit up when discussing art, and how passionate she was about it. As they enjoyed dessert, Lillian asked, Joshua, have you ever thought about doing something different with your life? Something beyond work? Joshua smiled and nodded. Yes, I've thought about it, he began, and their conversation continued, the night growing even more memorable as they delved into dreams and possibilities. Sometimes, I crave something fresh and new, Joshua admitted thoughtfully. But for now, my job takes up most of my time. How about you? Lillian's eyes sparkled as she replied, I've always dreamed of having my own little cafe. I think it would be amazing to create a place where people feel cozy and happy. That sounds wonderful, Joshua said with a smile. I'm sure you'd make it happen. You're always so full of energy and ideas. Over the following weeks, their relationship continued to blossom. Romantic evenings became a regular occurrence, with trips to the movies, art exhibitions, and quiet dinners. One evening, they attended an art show, and Lillian's enthusiasm was infectious. Look at this painting, Joshua, she said, pointing to a vibrant canvas. It's simply mesmerizing. Every brushstroke feels like it tells a story. Joshua studied the painting, then turned to her with a smile. I can see that. I love how you notice the depth in art that I might overlook. Lillian's gaze softened. I think it's because I've always tried to find meaning in everything I do. It helps me understand people better. You have a remarkable way of seeing things, Joshua remarked. That's one of the many reasons I enjoy spending time with you. The following week, they dined at a new restaurant and began discussing plans for the weekend. How about spending some time at my country house? Joshua suggested as they enjoyed their meal. It's a great place to relax and unwind. That sounds amazing, Lillian replied, her excitement evident. I've always dreamed of spending time surrounded by nature. Let's do it. When they arrived at the country house, Lillian was captivated by its charm. Joshua, this place is wonderful, she said as she wandered through the garden. It's so peaceful and serene here. I'm glad you like it, Joshua said, pulling her into a gentle hug. This place helps me relax and forget about work. That evening, they sat by the fireplace with cups of tea, sharing stories and their innermost thoughts. Lillian opened up about her childhood and how her parents had always supported her dreams. They were my greatest inspiration, she said warmly. They always encouraged me to pursue what made me happy." Joshua smiled, his voice soft. "I grew up in a small family too. My parents were always supportive, but I felt like I needed to achieve more to make them proud." "That's wonderful," Lillian said. "The way you talk about your family shows how much you value relationships and the people you love." They spent a few peaceful days at the country house, enjoying the tranquility and strengthening their bond. By the time they returned to the city, Joshua felt their connection had grown even deeper. A few days later over dinner, Joshua brought up an important topic. "Lillian, maybe it's time you met my daughter," he suggested cautiously. Lillian's eyes lit up with joy. "That's a wonderful idea. I'd love to meet her. I've been thinking a lot about our future, and this feels like the right step." Together, they began to discuss how to introduce Lillian to Stacy, and their plans became filled with excitement and anticipation. Joshua felt more certain than ever that their relationship was blossoming into something truly special. The morning began like many others, with coffee and light conversation. Joshua sat at the table in Lillian's apartment, watching as she prepared breakfast. "Josh, don't forget, I have that meeting with my boss today," she said, her voice steady but tinged with nervousness. "I remember," Joshua said, wrapping his arms around her from behind and pressing a kiss to her neck. "You'll do great. You've prepared so well." "Thank you," she replied, laughing softly. "I'm still a little nervous, though." "Don't worry," Joshua reassured her as he poured their coffee. "You've got this, and I'll be right here when you're done." After breakfast, Joshua drove Lillian to her office. As they sat in the car, they made plans for the evening. "I'm free after work," Joshua said. "How about dinner at that new restaurant you mentioned?" "That sounds perfect," Lillian replied, her eyes sparkling with happiness. "I can't wait." When Lillian stepped into her office, Joshua drove to his own, where a meeting with Mr. Thompson awaited. His desk was piled with final documents that needed reviewing. As he focused on the papers, his assistant, Rachel, peeked into the office. "Joshua, are you ready for the meeting?" she asked. "Yes, Rachel," he replied, closing the folder with a confident smile. "I'm all set." "I think it'll go smoothly. Don't worry," Rachel said reassuringly. Joshua smiled at her confidence. "Thanks, Rachel. I appreciate it." At the appointed time, Joshua made his way to Mr. Thompson's office. As he walked, he reflected on how crucial it was to finalize this project, not only for the company but also to free up more time for Lillian. Inside, he felt a renewed sense of determination. When he entered the office, Mr. Thompson was seated at his desk, reviewing some documents. "Good afternoon, Mr. Thompson," Joshua said, extending his hand. "I'm ready to discuss everything." "Good afternoon, Mr. Mitchell," Mr. Thompson replied, shaking his hand. "Let's get down to business." They sat at the table, and Joshua opened the folder of documents. Mr. Thompson carefully reviewed the terms before looking up at Joshua. "All right, Mr. Mitchell," he said, nodding. "I agree to your terms." He signed the documents and added, "Everything looks professional and well prepared." "Thank you, Mr. Thompson," Joshua replied, feeling a wave of relief. "This is an important step for us." As Joshua gathered his belongings, satisfied with the successful outcome, he noticed Lillian entering the office with a colleague. "Hi," Lillian said, walking over to him. "How did the meeting go?" "It went great," Joshua replied with a smile. "We came to an agreement. This is a significant step forward." "That's wonderful," Lillian said, her smile lighting up the room. "I'm so glad everything worked out." "Me too," Joshua said, his heart racing at the sight of her. "Shall we celebrate this evening?" "I'd love to," Lillian replied, her eyes sparkling with joy. "I can't wait to spend time with you." After saying their goodbyes, Joshua left the office feeling buoyed by the success of the meeting and the anticipation of the evening with Lillian. Back home, Joshua pondered how to make the evening special. Picking up the phone, he called Lillian to confirm their plans. "Hi, Joshua," she answered warmly. "Are you home yet?" "Yes, I just got back," he said. "How was your day?" "Everything's good," she replied. "Can we meet at 7 p.m.? "Perfect," Joshua said, unable to hide his excitement. "Great," Lillian said with a smile in her voice. "See you soon." That evening, when they met at the restaurant, Joshua was delighted to see Lillian. She looked stunning, and he felt a swell of pride and joy. "Hi," he said, hugging her. "You look amazing." "Thank you," Lillian replied, her eyes shining. "I'm so happy to be here with you." They spent the evening enjoying delicious food and meaningful conversation. Every moment together was filled with laughter, connection, and emotions that deepened their bond. Joshua realized just how much his feelings for Lillian had grown, and how much he valued their time together. As the evening came to an end, they stood outside the restaurant. Lillian touched his hand, and their eyes met. In that quiet moment, Joshua felt their connection deepen even further. "Thank you for a wonderful evening," Lillian said, her voice warm and sincere. "Thank you," Joshua replied, leaning in to gently kiss her. "It was fantastic." As Lillian disappeared into the night, Joshua stood for a moment, his heart racing. He couldn't stop smiling, already looking forward to their next time together. A month passed since they had started dating, and their relationship had grown stronger. Joshua knew it was time to take an important step, introducing Lillian to his daughter, Stacy. The thought of it excited him, but he also felt the weight of how significant this moment was for their future. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, Joshua and Lillian arrived at his house. Stacy was at home, playing with her toys and eagerly awaiting her dad's return. As they entered, the cheerful sound of Stacy's laughter filled the house. "Daddy!" Stacy shouted, running toward him with open arms. "Joshua, you're back!" Stacy exclaimed, running to her father with excitement. "Hi, my princess," Joshua said warmly, pulling her into a hug. "I have someone important I want you to meet." Stacy noticed Lillian standing nearby and curiously eyed her. "Who's this lady?" she asked, tilting her head in curiosity. "This is Lillian," Joshua said with a smile. "I wanted you two to meet." Understanding how important this moment was, Lillian crouched down to be at Stacy's level. In her hands, she held a large, soft doll. "Hi, Stacy," Lillian said gently, extending the doll toward her. "This is for you. I hope you like it." Stacy's eyes lit up as she accepted the doll with joy. "Thank you, Aunt Lillian," she exclaimed. "Does it talk?" "No, it doesn't talk," Lillian replied with a kind smile. "But it will always listen to your stories." "Is it gonna live with us?" Stacy asked eagerly, turning to her dad. Joshua chuckled softly and said, "Let's all get to know each other first. Why don't you show Lillian your room and your toys?" "Come on, I'll show you," Stacy said excitedly, grabbing Lillian's hand and leading her to the room. "I have lots of toys, and I love to play with them." Once inside, Stacy enthusiastically showed off her toys, describing each one in detail. Lillian listened attentively, asking questions with genuine curiosity. "This is my favorite bear," Stacy said, holding up a well-loved stuffed animal. "I always sleep with it." "It's very cute," Lillian said warmly. "Do you sleep with it every night?" "Yes." Stacy nodded eagerly. "And this is a car that can go super fast. Do you want me to show you?" "Of course," Lillian replied with a smile. "I'd love to see it." They spent hours playing together, laughing and sharing stories. Stacy showed Lillian all her favorite toys, and their connection grew stronger with every moment. After their playtime, the three of them sat down for dinner. Joshua had prepared a light meal, and the atmosphere at the table was filled with happiness. "Dad," Stacy asked between bites, "can Aunt Lillian cook as deliciously as you?" "She can," Joshua said with a grin. "I'll definitely make something tasty for you soon," Lillian added with a laugh, raising her glass. "This evening has been wonderful." After dinner, Joshua walked Lillian to the door. Just before she left, Stacy tugged on her dad's sleeve. "Daddy," she said softly, her voice tinged with concern, "is Lillian going to be my new mommy?" Joshua knelt down and hugged his daughter close. "Stacy," he began gently, "I know this might feel a little confusing, but Lillian and I want you to be happy. We'll spend more time together, and I'm sure she'll be a great friend to you." "Do you like her?" Stacy asked, studying her father's face. "A lot," Joshua admitted with a smile. "Lillian is wonderful, and I think she'll be an important part of our lives." "Okay," Stacy said, her voice still hesitant but thoughtful. "I'll try to be friends with her." "That's all I can ask for," Joshua said, holding her close. "I'm sure everything will work out fine." Lillian, noticing their conversation from the door, stepped forward with a warm smile. "Stacy," she said kindly, "I'm so glad I got to meet you today. I hope we can have lots of fun together." "I'm happy too," Stacy replied, her expression softening. "Can we play with toys again when you visit?" "Definitely," Lillian promised. "I'm already looking forward to next time." After Lillian left, Joshua hugged Stacy tightly and thanked her for being so open to meeting someone new. He knew that integrating a new person into their family dynamic wasn't easy, but he was optimistic about their future together. A few weeks later, Lillian moved into Joshua's home. The transition wasn't without its challenges, but they worked hard to make things smooth and joyful. Lillian quickly adapted to her role, and her relationship with Stacy became an important and positive part of their lives. One Saturday, Joshua returned home after a long day at work and heard laughter coming from Stacy's room. Curious, he peeked inside and saw Lillian and Stacy playing a board game. Lillian, dressed casually in a bright dress with her hair pulled into a bun, was fully engaged in the game. "Daddy, look, I won!" Stacy shouted, holding up her game piece triumphantly. "Way to go," Lillian praised her. "You're such a good player." "We've been playing for an hour," Stacy noted proudly. "Lillian is really good at this." Joshua stepped into the room, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Hey," he said, smiling warmly. "You both are amazing." "We just finished the game," Lillian said, looking up at Joshua with a smile. "Now we're going to read a book." "That sounds great," Joshua said, leaning over to kiss Lillian on the cheek. "I can see you're having a wonderful time." "Daddy, Lillian said we could go to the zoo this weekend," Stacy exclaimed excitedly. "Yes, that's true," Lillian confirmed. "We wanted to spend some time outdoors." "That sounds perfect," Joshua said, pulling Lillian into a hug. "You've really connected with Stacy, and it's amazing to see how happy she is with you." Lillian blushed slightly but smiled warmly. "Thank you, Joshua. It's so important to me that Stacy is happy. I really feel like part of the family." That evening, after Stacy had fallen asleep, Joshua and Lillian sat in the kitchen for a quiet dinner. Lillian had prepared a delicious meal, which she served with pride. "I put a lot of effort into this," she said with a smile, setting the plate in front of him. "I hope you like it." Joshua took a bite and grinned. "It's fantastic," he said. "It tastes wonderful, and it makes me so happy to see how much you care about us." "I'm just trying to make everything as comfortable and joyful as possible," Lillian replied softly. "You're doing an incredible job," Joshua said, reaching for her hand. "I feel confident that we made the right choice. Together." "We're in this together," Lillian said with a smile, her voice full of warmth and love. After dinner, Joshua and Lillian settled into the living room, talking about their plans for the weekend. Joshua couldn't help but reflect on how much his life had changed for the better since Lillian had become part of it. Their shared moments, attention to detail, and mutual desire to create a cozy, loving home had become the foundation of their relationship. "What do you think?" Joshua asked, leaning back on the couch. "What else could we do to make this house feel even more like home?" "I think we already have everything we need," Lillian replied thoughtfully. "But maybe we could create more family traditions to make weekends even more special." "That's a great idea," Joshua said, his face lighting up. "We could start with something simple, like weekly movie nights or hosting family dinners every weekend." "I love that," Lillian said with enthusiasm. "It would be a wonderful way to spend time together and create lasting memories." Over the next few weeks, as they began implementing small traditions, Joshua and Lillian felt their bond deepen even further. Whether it was planning for the future or simply enjoying the little moments, their lives together became richer and more fulfilling. Months passed, and their days were filled with happiness and love. Evening walks, shared dinners, and celebrations only strengthened their relationship. One Friday evening, Joshua decided it was time to take the next step. He would propose to Lillian. He carefully planned the evening, choosing a cozy restaurant with a breathtaking view of the city. Lillian had no idea what Joshua was planning. She thought it was just another lovely dinner. But Joshua wanted to make the moment unforgettable. He reserved a table by the window, ordered her favorite dish, and ensured the atmosphere was perfect with candlelight and soft music. When they arrived at the restaurant, Lillian was immediately enchanted by the setting. Surrounded by the soft glow of candles and the twinkling city lights, she felt like she was in a dream. "This place is amazing, Joshua," she said, her voice filled with awe. "You really went all out." "I wanted tonight to be special," Joshua replied, taking her hand and leading her to the table. "You deserve something beautiful." They sat down, and as they began discussing their weekend plans, the waiter brought over a bottle of wine and beautifully arranged menus. Joshua waited for the perfect moment to speak. Lifting his glass, he looked deeply into Lillian's eyes. "I'd like to make a toast," he said, "to us, to the love we've found, and to the future we're building together." "To us," Lillian echoed, her eyes shining as she raised her glass. "You make my life incredible." As they finished dessert, Joshua felt the time was right. He stood, reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Taking a deep breath, he approached Lillian with a warm smile. "Lillian," he began, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. "In all the time we've spent together, I've come to realize how much you mean to me. You've brought so much joy and happiness into my life, and I can't imagine it without you." Lillian looked up at him in surprise, her eyes beginning to well with tears. "Joshua, are you serious?" she asked, her voice trembling. Joshua opened the box, revealing a beautiful diamond ring. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you," he continued. "I want you to be my wife. Will you marry me and be with me always?" Tears streamed down Lillian's face as she froze, overcome with emotion. "Joshua, this is incredible," she murmured, barely able to speak. "So, what do you say?" Joshua asked softly, his heart pounding as he awaited her response. "Yes," Lillian said at last, her voice filled with joy. "Yes. I'll marry you." Joshua slipped the ring onto her finger as they embraced, the world around them fading into the background. "I'm so happy," Lillian said, holding him tightly. "This is more perfect than I could have ever imagined." "I'm happy too," Joshua replied, leaning in to kiss her. "I wanted this moment to be just right, and I'm glad it was." After leaving the restaurant, Joshua suggested they take a walk along the waterfront to celebrate. Hand in hand, they strolled under the night sky, illuminated by the city lights. "We should tell Stacy," Lillian said, her voice full of excitement. "I'm sure she'll be thrilled to hear the news." "Of course," Joshua agreed with a smile. "It's an important moment for our family, and I want her to be part of it." When they returned home, they gathered Stacy to share their exciting news. As expected, the little girl's face lit up with joy, marking the beginning of an exciting new chapter for their family. Stacy was ecstatic. "Daddy! Lillian!" she exclaimed, her face lighting up with joy. "This is so amazing! I've always dreamed of having a mom, and now it's real." "We're happy too," Joshua said, pulling his daughter into a warm hug. "I hope this makes our family even happier." Lillian knelt down to hug Stacy, smiling brightly. "I promise we'll create so many happy memories together." They soon began planning the wedding, choosing a date, and discussing all the little details. It was a time filled with excitement, anticipation, and preparation for a new life filled with hope and joy. Joshua and Lillian worked together on everything, from selecting the perfect wedding dress to designing the invitations and decorations, pouring love and thoughtfulness into every decision. Finally, the wedding day arrived. Joshua and Lillian chose a charming countryside hotel as the venue for the ceremony. The day was filled with excitement, laughter, and love. Stacy was thrilled to be a part of the celebration, her radiant smile captured in every photograph. When the ceremony began, Joshua stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored suit, his heart racing with nervous excitement. As the music started, Lillian entered the hall in a stunning wedding dress, and Joshua couldn't take his eyes off her. She looked absolutely breathtaking. The ceremony was deeply touching, filled with heartfelt vows that reflected the profound love and commitment they had for each other. When the moment came to exchange rings, both Joshua and Lillian felt an unbreakable connection, knowing their lives were now intertwined forever. As the officiant declared them husband and wife, they embraced and shared their first kiss as a married couple. The guests erupted into applause, cheering and congratulating them with genuine joy. It was a moment where time seemed to stand still, allowing them to savor the beginning of their new chapter. After the ceremony, a lively reception followed, filled with dancing, laughter, and celebration. Joshua and Lillian relished every moment of the day, knowing they were stepping into a future filled with happiness. As the evening drew to a close and the guests began to depart, Joshua and Lillian stood by the window, gazing at the stars. "I'm so happy we have each other," Joshua said, pulling Lillian into an embrace. "And I'm happy too," Lillian replied softly, kissing him. "We made this happen. Together." They looked out at the night sky, feeling a sense of peace and excitement for the future. In that quiet moment, they knew that with love and support, their lives would be filled with endless joy and shared adventures. After their wedding, Joshua, Lillian, and Stacy decided to spend their honeymoon together as a family. While an unconventional choice for newlyweds, it was important to Joshua that Stacy felt included in this new chapter of their lives. Lillian fully supported the decision, knowing how much it meant to Joshua to prioritize his daughter. They chose a beautiful coastal destination, known for its serene beaches and family-friendly activities. The trip was carefully planned to ensure everyone had a wonderful time. When they arrived at the resort, Stacy was enchanted by the golden sands, sparkling blue sea, and warm sunlight. "Daddy, look, we can build a sandcastle over there," Stacy exclaimed, pointing excitedly at the beach toys near their room. "Yes, Princess," Joshua replied, hugging her. "We'll spend the whole day at the beach. You can choose whatever you want to do." "What if we build a sandcastle first, then go for a swim?" Stacy suggested, her eyes shining with excitement. "That sounds like a perfect plan," Lillian said with a smile. "Let's start with a sandcastle building competition. I'm sure we can all become castle experts." They spent the morning on the beach, building intricate sandcastles and collecting seashells. Joshua and Lillian helped Stacy create a magnificent castle, adorned with colorful shells and sticks, and together they laughed and cheered at their teamwork. "This is a real royal castle," Lillian said, admiring their creation. "Thank you," Stacy exclaimed, beaming with pride. The day was filled with laughter and bonding, strengthening their family connection. It was clear to Joshua and Lillian that this new chapter of their lives was everything they had hoped for, and more. "Lillian, you're a true sandcastle queen," Stacy said joyfully, her laughter filling the air. After their time on the beach, the family decided to explore the surrounding area. Joshua and Lillian chose a family-friendly tour that included a scenic boat ride and visits to local attractions. As they boarded the boat, Stacy's excitement was impossible to contain. "This feels like a real adventure, just like in the books," she said, her eyes wide as she took in the beautiful scenery. "I'm glad you're excited," Joshua said, glancing at Lillian with a smile. "This should be a perfect addition to our trip." As the boat set sail, Lillian and Joshua enjoyed the peaceful views and relaxing atmosphere. Wrapped in each other's arms, they quietly discussed how special the vacation had been so far. "I'm so glad we're doing this together," Lillian said, looking up at Joshua. "It feels so wonderful." "And I feel the same," Joshua replied, holding her close. "Seeing Stacy so happy makes it all worth it. We're creating beautiful memories together." After the boat ride, they returned to the hotel and set up an evening picnic on the beach. Joshua prepared a basket of food while Lillian decorated the area with candles and soft blankets. "This is so romantic," Lillian said, admiring the setup. "We should make this a tradition." "That's a great idea," Joshua agreed, opening a bottle of wine and pouring drinks. "It's so peaceful and cozy here." Stacy eagerly dug into the food, chatting happily as they enjoyed their meal. Afterward, the three of them strolled along the beach, watching the sun set over the horizon. "Daddy, I love the beach," Stacy shouted, running across the sand. "This is the best place in the world." "I'm glad you like it," Joshua said, walking alongside her with Lillian. "We want you to always remember this vacation as something special. We're really creating amazing memories," Lillian added, smiling as she hugged Joshua. As night fell, Joshua and Lillian tucked Stacy into bed before heading to the hotel terrace to enjoy the starlit sky. "This vacation has been incredible," Lillian said softly, gazing at the stars. "I'll never forget these moments." "Neither will I," Joshua agreed, taking her hand in his. "And I hope we have many more days like this." Under the stars, they talked late into the night, cherishing every second together. It was their first honeymoon as a family, and they knew it was only the beginning of a life filled with love and shared adventures. As the vacation came to an end, Joshua, Lillian, and Stacy returned home with their hearts full of happiness and gratitude. This trip marked the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with love, laughter, and shared dreams. Back home, Joshua dove into work, focusing on an important new project. Meanwhile, Lillian, who had recently told him about her decision to leave her job, began exhibiting strange behavior. Joshua dismissed it as part of her adjustment to their new life, but an ominous tension began to build. One afternoon, while Joshua was at work, Stacy accidentally overheard Lillian on the phone. Hiding behind a door, she tried not to make a sound, but fear gripped her as she listened. "Don't worry," Lillian whispered, holding a small jar in her hands. "I already have the poison. I'll slip it into his tea tonight, and once Joshua's out of the way, we'll take over his company." Stacy's heart raced as the words sunk in. She covered her mouth to keep from crying out and stood frozen in shock, trying to process what she had heard. When Joshua returned home that evening, Stacy ran to him, her face pale and her voice trembling. "Dad," she whispered urgently, "don't drink tea from that cup. The new mom put poison in it." Joshua was stunned by her words, unsure of how to respond. But something inside him urged him to trust his daughter. Quietly, he switched the cups on the table. When Lillian returned to the kitchen, she noticed nothing unusual. "I can't wait to drink this tea," Lillian said with a smile, lifting the cup to her lips. "It's just what I need to relax after a long day." As she sipped the tea, her face suddenly turned red. She gasped for air, clutching her throat. I feel terrible," Lillian stammered, panic in her voice. "Something's wrong." Within moments, she collapsed to the floor. Joshua quickly called for an ambulance, holding Stacy close as she trembled in his arms. "Princess, how did you know the tea was poisoned?" Joshua asked, his voice shaking as they waited at the hospital. "I heard her say it," Stacy replied, tears streaming down her face. "She said she wanted to make you sick and take your company. I didn't want anything to happen to you." The next morning, Joshua visited Lillian in her hospital room. She lay pale and frail, her face etched with regret. "Why would you do this to me?" Joshua demanded, his voice filled with hurt and disbelief. "How could you?" Tears streamed down Lillian's cheeks. "I'm sorry, Joshua," she sobbed. "I never wanted this. It was all a mistake." At that moment, Nicholas, Joshua's longtime friend, burst into the room. His face was pale with fear and guilt. "What are you doing here?" Joshua asked angrily, his voice rising. Nicholas hesitated before blurting out, "She's pregnant with my child." Joshua froze, his mind reeling. "What?" "We planned this together," Nicholas admitted, his voice trembling. "The love, the poison. It was all staged. I wanted to take everything from you, just like you took Eva from me." "You were supposed to drink the tea," Nicholas continued, tears streaming down his face. "I wanted you to feel the pain I've carried all these years." Joshua's anger turned cold. "You don't know love. All you wanted was revenge and money." With those words, Joshua walked out of the hospital room, his heart shattered. His world had collapsed, leaving him with only the pain of betrayal. Back at home, Joshua held Stacy close, vowing to rebuild their lives. Though broken and battered by what had happened, he knew he had to stay strong for his daughter. Together, they would find a way to heal and create a new future, leaving the shadows of betrayal behind.